In the case of general AI, definitionally is the case that this will take away certain things that human minds are currently doing, and we work in a service economy, so here in the U.S. at least. So that's going to obviously take away. I'm hearing some like backsplash from somebody's mic. I'm not sure who it is. I don't think I
I
hear you
was
anymore.
muted. Yeah, I was
Okay,
muted.
okay. All right, it's all good. In the case of the problems you're bringing up, of like there's always been work for humans. If we extended this argument outward, right? Like imagine like the we used to ride horses instead of going cars, right? If I made the argument of these new innovations and technologies, there's always just going to be better jobs for horses or something. This would be ridiculous. We've seen that horses' jobs have been taken; they don't have jobs anymore. In the case of GAI, if it's the case that it's able to do work far more efficiently than any person could, any company that's able to make use of that would not want to hire human employees. It wouldn't make much sense for them to.
Okay. All right. So yeah, no. So one of the first things, the humans right there, you're kind of just comparing humans to the horses and people. Once again, this has been always it does like, humans are not like these horse-like creatures. We have a lot of, different capacities. And one of the reasons why there's always jobs for humans alongside all the other things is there's always different types of problems to solve. And if you don't have humans working, then the humans aren't making money. If the humans aren't making money, they don't have money to buy the other goods of this other stuff, and the entire economy grinds to a halt and just kind of
That's a
explodes.
problem.
Right? Well, no, it's not.
We should do something about
that's
that.
I'm saying it's not a problem, because one of the things about a capitalist economic system is that it's insanely adaptable. This idea of, I don't know if I'm using the term correctly, but it's derived from a Marxist term, creative destruction, the ability to kind of go out there, just a private individual, create a company. Maybe it succeeds, maybe it fails, right? But if it succeeds, it means that there's some sort of economic niche there for it. And the companies that succeed are the ones that are able to, this boom and bust cycle is always kind of like cited as this great catastrophe.
You
No,
actually
it's not.
mentioned
No, it's
the
not.
reasons why
It's
you
not
think
this great catastrophe.
you actually you I didn't say it was. I said you actually mentioned the things that you think make humans capable of always finding new niches to work in, that distinguish them from horses, for example. I agree, there are. That's their minds. Human beings have very big, huge, really good brains. Horses don't, right? Horses don't really have that. Human beings have the ability to problem solve. Horses don't have that same kind of ability. In the case of human beings, we're much more intelligent than they are. There's another thing, it's way more intelligent than we are, that we make. It's going to be really, really hard for us to compete with that. That's the issue with AI. Currently, they're not more intelligent than us. Every single AI is dumber than a human.
No, sure. And AIs, generally speaking, are only capable of doing essentially one thing.
That's called narrow AI, yeah.
Yeah, you get this thing, and this idea of general AI. I'm personally, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at all this stuff, and I'm fairly, I'm personally skeptical at the emergence of general AI, and this is, I think, a disagreement that we're going to have on kind of like a principled basis. But even
really quick, because we have it based on a principle basis, do you think you should trust your intuitions and your guesses and gut feelings about AI, or do you think you should support the massive body of researchers into AI who specialize in that field, who predict general AI by about 2060?
People have been predicting stuff forever.
True. People in fields have been predicting stuff forever, and they've been getting it pretty correct.
AI since the 50s. They're said they run into a lot of problems with especially technological predictions.
Who's been
people that are out there that are saying
making that prediction?
Technological singularity, and we're going to have fully whatever AI by 2045, and those predictions. We had the what's it called?
Hold on. I agree that non-experts sometimes make predictions about things and get it wildly wrong. There are two places that you can find where predictions are usually made and are correct. One is the field of science. That's the point. The other one is betting markets. Those are the two places, and both of those seem to agree that in the case of general AI, it's going to be about 2060 that we see that. It might be the case that it happens even later than that. Maybe it happens by 2150. Maybe we could just give you 100 extra years or so. Judged based on what the experts say, this would be a wildly late guessing point. But even then, the problem still exists, and your system still needs to solve it. It could be the case that it happens in 200 years. Your system will still need to solve it. No matter how long you push the deadline off, how far away from the expert consensus you get, you still have a problem you need to solve. It doesn't really matter what you think the prediction is going to be.
No, look, it's not what I think the prediction is going to be. It's about if I think the thing is capable of being completed to begin with. But that's just a whole other thing. Like you've had people making predictions as it goes, it's going to be 2060. You know, in 2006, there's a guy that would have been supposedly an expert in the field that would have been predicted that
So why don't
it's
you
going to happen in
why do
2070.
you think it's just impossible?
You
You
know,
don't have to get too deep into it, but just like a quick
uh,
rundown of why you think it's
so
impossible.
just the way that so just the way that what we're talking about, like how machine learning works and the way that narrow AIs function, you're either going to, you know, it's not necessarily very, uh, it's insane. I wouldn't say it's insanely difficult, but it's just from a technical perspective, the way that I understand, so I have people that that I know that work in AI field, and the way that they just that I've spoken to them, they work in the AI field, they work in especially security AI field, which they're trying to develop stuff that's capable of multiple subtasks, multiple different types of tasks, and essentially what they're settling on every single time are narrow AIs that are capable of doing that, because doing the general AI thing is just not worth it. It's just something that like they've tried
I
and
agree.
they're
Currently, it's not. The
not
cost
failing.
is,
So it's so
you know, I
so
current I
so
agree currently, but there are teams who actually do work in general AI. Obviously, in the case of general AI, it's not the case that we're going to get it anytime soon. Nobody's predicting that. Obviously, the predictions are 2060-ish. But there are teams that work in this, and there are plenty of ways that would just be obviously possible. You were making the argument it's impossible, not the argument that it's too expensive right now. In the case of
well,
it being
not too expensive
impossible,
at
it's just
all.
clearly the case that human brains are a mechanism, right? If human brains are a
Sure.
mechanism, then there can be a machine that runs that mechanism. Even if it didn't have a soul, it
Okay.
could
So
simulate or emulate
so,
the principles of the human brain.
so
Well,
there's the
okay, let's slow down
there's
really.
the
Let's slow down really
Mhm.
quick. General AI, and then there's the AI that we all think about when we watch Iron Man and hear Wednesday talking. Can
Yeah.
you guys parse those two things right now?
Sure, I
Okay.
can do that.
So
Watch.
AI, right?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So AI, right? When we talk about science fiction AI, right? That is like a fully functional mind. That's like it's a human-like soul inside of like a computer, right? That's Cortana, right? That's Wednesday. That's whatever. That's like a human person, except electrons in a hologram, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what we call artificial intelligence in like computer science, right? Is like the thing that runs the enemies in Halo, right? It's the elites, right, on the battlefield, right? It's the thing that when you take a photo, right, is able to determine if
You're.
it's, a bee or an
Can I just
apple or
correct you?
whatever. That's what we call narrow AI.
Can I,
So
can I
general
really
AI
quick
is an
just
AI
jump in
that can
and
do
correct you on
multiple
this?
subtasks, or that can do all tasks.
All right,
That
Cynthia,
can
you give it a shot.
learn easily to do all
Sure.
tasks.
Sure. In the case of sci-fi AI, this is what we call AI in computer science. It's also the case that narrow AI is AI in computer science. Sci-fi AI, the kind you're thinking of, that is what general intelligence is, right? Usually there are a bunch of like extra features that don't really matter too much with the sci-fi AI that we don't really care much about in the general AI. But there are projects working on modeling, for example, the human brain in a computer. Obviously, it seems to be the case that if you believe in a soul, whatever this is, probably won't have it. But even then, it would still do the functions of a human brain. You could think of it as like a philosophical zombie, right? Sci-fi AI is general AI. That's what you're talking about. The AI that usually people say in computer science would not be like the elites in Halo or like a video game character. They're referring to like machine learning, something that like simulates intelligence and that it can learn things and gather new information about a task. It doesn't need to be taught, hard programmed. It can learn it itself through input data.
Yeah.
That's the
So the
definition
way
of those
so
two
they
terms. That would be narrow AI.
yeah, so the way that would like one of the applications there is in security applications to try to figure out, using open source data, like different patterns. It's one of these kind of pattern recognition things. So if you've ever seen like a something of like, I'm programming machine learning AI to like play this game the most efficient way possible, it basically learns the rules on its own. It has like an up meter, and so kind of saves that configuration, and it tries to do different things on its own. And
What do you
it,
mean?
huh?
I'm not really sure what you're talking about.
Okay, so not. I mean, so people have done like machine learning.
Are you talking about like the neural network that played Mario or whatever?
Oh yes, I'm trying to explain to people. Yes, one of
Sure,
the
yeah.
neural
So,
yeah, neural network that played Mario.
uh-huh.
So you had somebody who inputted who programmed the neural net to learn how to play Mario. At first, it basically lost every single time, and by the end of it, it basically got perfect scores. Because it kind of learns the timings with like minute precision and is able to, use the
Yeah.
commands with minute precision. But if you take that AI and you told it to do something other than Mario, it's no longer able to do that, right? Because it's just too
Sorry,
coded.
this is a
And
little bit of
it
a
does that, it kind
tangent.
of
Is there a way I
forgets the
can
scenario.
you wouldn't be bothered
Right.
if I just like move the conversation back on track?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
This is kind of like
Yeah,
completely
the
far away.
point of bringing up general AI is that it is the case that it's possible, according to what most experts say. The problems you've like listed that would you think would make it impossible don't seem to actually be very hardline critiques of its impossibility. If it's the case that this can do all of the things that human brain can do, it might be the case it can't do what humans physically can do. Like maybe it's not able to do something like that. I wouldn't know much about that. But if it can do what human brains can do, it would make a lot of sense. It would be able to put a lot of humans who only work with their brain and a keyboard out of work. I'm one of those people. I wouldn't like that very much. A lot of other people are that. We seem to mostly run on a service economy, so that would be a very big issue. If you're saying it's the case that the economy would grind to a halt if general AI took over everything in society, and there was no backup plan. I agree. That's a problem with your system. That's why I brought it up. You saying capitalism is very able to adjust, I don't think is really a counter.
Right. So I probably should elaborate on the whole grind to a halt and why I thought that was like a big kind of explosive comeback. So one of the things that I mentioned, I think, in my opening statement is capitalism as one of these organically evolving systems of the economy, right? As this current organic evolution of the economy and all this problem solving that we've done together, one of the issues, right? One of the big problems that comes is like this economic collapse, economies, quote unquote, grinding to a halt. And this is one of the pressures that prevents, the system from collapsing because people, are people, we still want to do trade. And so this kind of organically evolving a system is constantly facing different pressures. So different types of, so wars and different types of trade and restrictions. And, I have this type of river, you have that type of river. Let's try to build something, across that, this type of technical progress as well. Also these types of economic progress. So the issue of, equity and trying to get, things of like shares and then share markets and the way that money developed from simply just a medium of exchange, a common medium of exchange. So, instead of bartering for stuff, instead we kind of use this thing, that's kind of shiny, right? And we're going to use it because it doesn't corrode, right? Which is good because now we can store value in it. We know that this kind of, barring people shaving off little bits and melting it later, it's going to be the same as it was like way back when. So it's a decent store of whatever value we want to trade for it. These other.
Sorry,
types,
can I just ask you what's your point with this?
so, sorry. The point is that the capitalistic system that we have now is is the product of thousands of years of humans evolving their ways that they want to trade with each other, because we have faced various different pressures. And one of the pressures that we're facing is, one of the things that's kind of incompatible with any of that is some sort of like total system or economic collapse. And after that type, that's one of the pressures that's boiling against it. It's one of the things of like when you see, you see what's called like the V, like the V diagram, right? Like so, V shaped economic growth, right? So you have,
I understand what you're talking
so
about. V
stuff like
curves.
yeah, V curves, right? You see
Okay.
stuff like V curves. So you have a lot of people, that the economy goes down, but because there's all these other
I'm
pressures.
sorry. How does this address my point? Is the issue? I don't.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
understand what
So all right. So what addresses your point is that before we get to the point, right, where all right, let's just accept that eventually we're going to have better AIs, right? This isn't going to happen overnight, and the way that the economy and the system and the flexibility and the ability for stuff like creative destruction and for people to find different niches, trading with each other, producing different things, trading with each other, the ability of humanity to adapt to the economic situation, to find different
Can I
roles
ask you
for
a
humans,
question?
because humans because humans having different roles
Really
and
quick.
earning money is necessary for other people to also make money, right? And so if nobody is employing people, right, you do get that downturn in the economy, but people eventually have to get employed again, or else you don't have any goods to sell them because they can't buy any goods. And so the system has built. Yeah, sorry, question.
I'm not really I'm not hearing the point
Oh,
of what
okay.
he's
Yeah, sorry.
asking.
So basically,
I was gonna say
just
the same
just
thing.
bullet point that thing for me, dog.
okay,
Just
all right.
bullet point it.
All right. So bullet point with that thing is that the economic system is adaptable, right? What we see as capitalism now is a development of hundreds of years of people introducing problems, having different types of economic pressures, and then overcoming them. So, for example, the emergence of new technologies, the losses of jobs replaced by other jobs, in part because it's necessary for people to be trading things with each other in order for trade to happen. If you don't have people on the other side of a trade interaction, then the
I
system
still don't get
simply
it.
doesn't work.
I don't understand the point.